Hello, welcome everyone to the Crayola webinar in partnership with Education Week. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dominique Young, and I am the Professional Development Leader at Crayola. And we are here to present how art integration has the power and the ability to transform school culture and student achievement. The reason why we felt it was really important to have this series on the importance of creativity is because, today's students really benefit from an inquiry-based classroom. When we have the ability to introduce topics and make learning and concepts more accessible to different types of learners and diverse learners, we really have more of an ability to reach more students and helping them by exploring conversation and discussion through hands-on projects and experiences. And so the purpose of today's webinar and Crayola's commitment to education is around continuing to support this type of creative and innovative instruction and helping to prepare our students for success. I want to jump in by introducing our really wonderful presenters this afternoon. Of course, you've heard from me, the professional leader at Crayola, but I'm also really happy to introduce you to Yvonne Shan O'Neill, who is an evaluator, an author, and a researcher and principal of Muse Research. Yvonne comes to us as a partner with the University of Pennsylvania, serving as a research advisory board member within the Human Flourishing Initiative. She's also the formerly founding director of research and evaluation for the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts. So we're really lucky to hear live case studies and primary research gathered by Yvonne around the impact of arts. And additionally, I'm really excited to introduce Sherry Sturman, Director of Education at Crayola. We have the awesome opportunity to be led by Sherry Sturman. In addition to leading the educational content and value of all of our Crayola resources, Sherry also sits on a number of advisory boards, including serving as vice chair for the Partnership for 21st Century Learning. She's the former director of early learning for the state of Ohio, and currently she sits on the board for the National Association of Educating Young Children and the National Child Development Council. So we're really fortunate to hear both the research, but also the practical strategies that have really been proven to help move the needle around creativity and help access and leverage creativity as an instructional strategy. So, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about why creativity in teaching matters and in learning. We're going to talk about the growth and the impact of arts integration through recent case studies. We're going to review promising practices in building creative capacity, and we're really going to look at some solutions on taking next steps in championing creatively alive children. I would like to believe that because you are joining this webinar, it is highly likely that you believe in the importance of arts education and you believe in the importance of creativity and its impact on culture and climate. And so you've come to the right discussion on what is the research, what is the compelling evidence, and what strategies can I take back to my school, back to my district, back to my community, or back to my state. There's a lot of research around how do you assess the impact of art education and how do you measure student gains around art education. And so I first want to just start by bringing your attention to some of the more inspirational studies that Crayola has looked to as we have developed our resources and our approach. Reinvesting in arts education is a wonderful study that was conducted by the President's Committee on Arts and Humanity, the Turnaround Arts Initiative, and it really highlights the importance of collaboration, the importance of developing the field of arts integration, the importance of expanding in-school art opportunities and in-school arts education for students, and also the importance of gathering evidence around impactful strategies that work with art and creativity. And so we were really, really inspired by the Reinvesting in Arts Education initiative, so much so that Crayola was one of the founding partners of the President's Committee on Arts and Humanities Turnaround Arts Initiative. Another really inspirational research is that of James Catterall, Doing Good by Doing Well, where they really looked at some of the lower performing schools in Los Angeles and identified that students were more engaged, students were having higher levels of achievement when you immersed them in arts education. And so we will take you guys through the references at the end of today's discussion, but I just wanted to highlight some of the pieces of research that have been really compelling as we advocate for the importance of art education. I mentioned earlier the results around Turnaround Arts, where Crayola conducted visual arts training for 8 of the lowest performing schools in the country, and now at 65 schools in the country. And what we're seeing is that there are measurable gains related to math at 22% and significant gains around reading at 12%. And of course, this is compared to some of the SIG schools within that same area. But more importantly, we're finding that it's a cultural thing. The same time that scores were rising around reading and math, what was really more striking were the disciplinary measures were reduced, suspension rates were reduced, attendance and enrollment increased. So we really saw, effects on social and emotional and effects on the climate of the school where students were more engaged and were having less problems around discipline and suspension. And when you think about how creativity can impact the school, you can't help but think about what does it mean beyond school? What does it mean beyond college and into career? And what we've heard is, 72% of business leaders strongly agree that creativity is the #1 skill that they're seeking when they're hiring. And so how do we think about what creativity can do within the classroom setting and within the school setting, and how it affects our students as they enter into the workforce? And so I'm going to turn it over to Yvonne Chand-O'Neill to really take us through what she's learned and documented around the impact of arts education and what it's done for students in schools. Yvonne?
Thank you, Dominique. Before we begin, I'd like to ask you to please open your group chat box in the bottom of your screens. We'll be participating in a fun group activity shortly. There are 3 key points I'd like to discuss with you today. First are the origins of the arts integration paradigm. Second, I'd like to highlight characteristics of successful arts integration programs and what makes them successful. And third, I will share examples of new innovative approaches to studying the effects of these programs. To begin this discussion, I'd like to first point to a few key impacts of arts participation on student outcomes. According to Americans for the Arts, students involved in the arts are 4 times more likely to be recognized for academic achievement than their non-arts participating peers. Also, low-income students with high arts participation have a 4% dropout rate. That's 5 times lower than their low-income peers. Students who take 4 years of arts and music classes average almost 100 points higher on their SAT scores than students that take only 1/2 a year or less. Low-income students who are highly engaged in the arts are 2 times as likely to graduate college as their peers with no arts integration. What is surprising is that in spite of these outcomes, funding for the arts in schools has been on a steady decline. So, to compensate for this loss in arts programming due to budget constraints, schools have begun to consider arts integration as a means to continue a steady stream of arts programming in schools as part of the regular school day, as well as to offer a new instructional approach for improving student outcomes. So, I briefly shared with you the origins of the arts integration paradigm. Let us now discuss the shared characteristics of successful arts integration programs. So characteristics of successful programs include those that offer sustained arts integration, or in other words, over multiple sessions and varied formats. For example, this is where visual note-taking comes into play. And also, for an example, a history class may use the visual triangle to examine how paintings depicted visual cues about history on one day in class, and perhaps a theoretical exercise or a theatrical exercise to explore the perspective of a historical figure from the same time period on another day. A homework assignment may include preparing a meal that features an item that would have been served during that time period, and so forth. You could have students creating a Facebook page for Julius Caesar. A second characteristic is that successful arts integration programs use arts integration strategies with examples that are culturally relevant to the contemporary lives of their students. For example, these teachers may use ethnic traditions and art forms that resonate with their student populations to bring the arts into their classrooms in ways that bring familiarity and meaning to students whose first language may not be English, for example. Third, successful arts integration programs provide students with opportunities to apply the arts integration strategies they are learning in multiple real-world domains. For example, if students are learning the strategy of elaboration, they may apply it in the context of extending an idea in an essay for English language arts, adding an element to an artwork, amplifying a different perspective in a history lesson, or building on to a scientific concept. The key is to make explicit to the students that the same strategy is being applied in each of these domains. Researchers and evaluators who are now examining the impact of these innovative programs are interested in understanding how arts integration affects each outcome, and such outcomes as creativity, pro-social learning, teamwork and collaboration, or increasing a student's comfort with finding missing pieces of a puzzle, or what we refer to as comfort with ambiguity. So for example, if they don't have all of the elements of or the instructions to a particular problem, what will they do about it? How comfortable are they with putting the pieces of that puzzle together to find a solution? Now, what you may be asking yourself is, can you actually measure these things? Well, the answer is an enthusiastic yes. So let's begin with measuring creativity. Over the next 30 seconds, please type into the group chat box as many square things as you can think of. Okay, I'll just pause for a moment while you enter into the group chat box as many square things as you can think of. Great. We're seeing a number of ideas, including ceiling tiles, ice cubes, crackers, dice, window panes. Next, please type in the number of ideas you came up with in those few seconds. How many ideas did you come up with in those few seconds? Excellent. Next, please count the categories of ideas that you came up with. For example, if you said ceiling tiles, ice cubes, crackers, and window panes, you would have 3 categories. Ceiling tiles and window panes could be building materials, ice cubes and crackers would be in the food category, and dice would be in a game or recreation category. Finally, we want to identify the ideas that no one else thought of. I did this exercise recently where someone gave the answer of a square meal or the person sitting next to them, which were both pretty original answers. Now, congratulations, you have just measured creativity. Once again, the number of ideas that you generate equals your fluency score. The number of categories of the ideas that you generated is your flexibility score. And how unique your idea is your originality score, which is given a number based on how many other people gave that answer. So now, as an important piece of information, we want you to know that these are indicators of creativity and actually measure creative potential, which is not how creative you actually are, but what your creative potential is or what your creative capacity is. So please keep these definitions in mind as we talk about a few studies in a moment. So we have talked about origins of the arts integration paradigm. We've discussed characteristics of successful arts integration programs. I would now like to share some examples of innovative approaches to examining the effectiveness of arts programs. My colleague Rekha Rajan and I have recently co-edited a new book that will be coming out this fall entitled Arts Evaluation and Assessment, Measuring Impact in Schools and Communities. It was written for arts educators, teachers, school administrators, arts programmers, students, and evaluators to provide some compelling examples of exemplary program evaluations in the arts conducted for such entities as schools, school districts, museums, community organizations, symphonic orchestras, and media companies. Sample chapters include evaluations on the wooden floor, a dance education program, a new college preparation approach by the College Board, a school music program and its impact on socio-emotional development, and a chapter devoted to placing these works in the context of arts policy and the creative economy. The first sample chapter I would like to highlight is about the wooden floor. which is an organization whose mission is to use dance as a creative development catalyst in order to empower youth from diverse backgrounds to strengthen self-esteem, self-discipline, and their sense of accomplishment through dance, academic, and family programs. Serving the most economically disadvantaged youth, its long-term vision is to break the cycle of poverty through generational change. Now, the quote by the founder, Beth Burns, that you see here in the background, beautifully captures the spirit of the work they do. The quality of your movement matters. Whether you're turning, leaping, or falling, your ideas evolve and choices change. Your movement creates a hallowed work of art. You. The chapter asks a number of research questions, but in the interest of time, I will talk about 3. The first research question asks, does long-term participation in the Wooden Floor's holistic program model boost student achievement and socio-emotional development? Number 2, does evidence support progress toward the Wooden Floor's ultimate goal of breaking generational cycles of poverty? And the third research question asks, what are critical ages and domains in which students mature through programmatic interventions at the Wooden Floor? And does gender matter? This table tells the initial story of what we are seeing as gains at this early stage of the study. Here we see that in 2 years, students made gains in the following areas: sense of purpose, seeks intrinsic rewards, integrity, sense of identity, empathy, attributions for success, sense of possibilities, collaboration, creative confidence in dance, pro-social behavior, and self-efficacy. The Wooden Floor plans to use these data for both instrumental and conceptual uses to advance effectiveness and sustain high-impact outcomes, as evidenced by their plans to expand in scale nationally. The next sample from our forthcoming book centers on the recent work conducted by the College Board, who addressed the following educational crisis stated here, as math and reading scores have improved in elementary and middle school students over the past 40 years. However, there is still a disturbing lack of improvement among the nation's high school students that may very well inhibit their college success. In this chapter, we asked, what were the specific skill sets identified by university and college professors that were underdeveloped in our high school students, contributing to the poor performance of incoming freshmen on their college-level coursework? And second, how could the College Board address this gap through targeted AP coursework in high school? Well, the following instructional framework was created as a foundation for the AP research course. Each component of this framework was designed to address a deficiency identified by the higher education community that was seen in our incoming college student population over the past few years. Now, this course actually gives students an opportunity to score a piece of music or to choreograph a dance and actually provide research background and document it as a research process and get AP credit for it. So through this course, which is the second in a 2-course AP capstone series, students will learn how to question and explore the boundaries of their current knowledge. They will understand and analyze arguments and authors' claims. They will learn how to evaluate multiple perspectives and synthesize ideas. These are the various skills that will prepare them to succeed, both in college and their future careers, which is the same focus shared by the Crayola approach that Sherry will speak with you about shortly. In terms of the impact of arts-integrated programs, as founding director of research and evaluation at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, I conducted a study with 796 students, 796 parents, and 90 teachers, where we found that students in an arts-integrated program generated more original and creative ideas than students in non-arts integrated programs. They had higher flexibility scores, and as you remember, it's the number of categories of ideas, and incidentally, high flexibility scores are associated with high standardized test scores. And these arts-integrated students had higher levels of effort applied to their schoolwork, and they also had higher levels of motivation and reconceived difficult assignments and projects as positive challenges. We are preparing our children for jobs that have yet to be invented. To succeed in this environment of constant stimulation and a high volume of information, they must be cognitively flexible, persistent, collaborative, and creative. I'd like to leave you with this thought. When arts integrated curriculum is artistically and culturally relevant to contemporary urban life, ethnologically alert to the heritages and cultures of the students and their communities, our students are better prepared to be innovative, be cognitively nimble, meet current state and national standards, and contribute as involved citizens of their communities. It has been a pleasure being with you today. Thank you.
Great. And if any of you have questions for Yvonne, she will be coming back on at the end to address questions. We're going to transition now, and I'm really thrilled that Yvonne has shared this evidence with you. So thank you, Yvonne, for really grounding everyone in this conversation about that research, why creative teaching and learning matters. So we're going to move from why to how to, with some practical ideas for how you can build creative capacity school-wide. So I always like to start with a conversation about what you think creativity means. And just reflect for a moment about your colleagues and conversations you've had with other educators. Seems as if in every school or every learning community, there's always someone who says, oh, I'm not creative. But you know they are. And you see how in so many ways they approach problems very uniquely and generate fantastic ideas. And so it helps to be able to come back and explain to that person what you think creativity means and explore what they think it means and align on that. So what we're going to do is put up a couple definitions. In the spirit of encouraging original thought, I'm just going to start and say there are no wrong answers. And in fact, if you have your own thought about what creativity means that we don't list here, please type that in the chat box. But would like you, when you see this list, to pick the definition that most resonates with you. And that will give everyone a sense of what our group on this webinar today is thinking. So please, oh, I love that people are starting to put in their own ideas. That's fantastic. So please vote on the, check off one of the radio dials and let us know what your preferred definition is. And we're going to show those results. And as a complement to that, I love that you're adding your own ideas and that we're seeing some original thought. Great. Going to keep this up just for another second or so be sure to vote, and let's see what people thought. Interesting. Okay, so it seems that most of our participants today selected creativity as the act of making connections between those seemingly unrelated ideas to make something new and appropriate. And then the others hover a bit lower, and then the one that came with the lowest is this coming up with new ideas that work. So I love the variety that we're seeing here today and how the spread is, and I'm most excited about your definitions that you've added. So we're talking about creativity because it is the common thread in so many innovative teaching strategies that are being discussed and implemented in schools today. So arts integration, or we like to call it arts-infused education because that infusion is so deep and broad across the curriculum. Or if you're calling your initiative project-based learning or STEAM, we can look at the definitions, right? And here's the very crisp but deep definition that we have for art integration. And of course, project-based learning is getting a lot of attention now. And here is the definition of STEAM. But beyond the literal definitions, we like to look at what are the pillars that hold up all of these innovative teaching strategies. And it really falls into these 4 pillars, right? So these innovative teaching strategies focus on authentic, relevant experiences. They engage learners in this iterative problem-solving, problem-finding process, right? That's cross-curricular in its approach. All of these strategies view learners as decision makers who have voice and choice and really drive that learning. And it provides students with agency so they can understand their learning style and guide their own learning, which is deeply rooted in their own curiosity and discovery. So those are those 4 pillars that we're seeing. Whether your school says, you might have a collaborative message, we're going to be a STEAM school, or we're an arts integration school, or a project-based learning school, but these are the pillars that are so strong and in common. And what you see here is that these pillars really address the needs of 21st century learners. So Crayola is very proud to be a member of the Partnership for 21st Century Learning. It's an organization that really defined the 4 C's. And many people are familiar with the 4 C's, but they don't realize that that terminology came from P21. And I recall the board meeting where our communications expert sat us down and said, you guys, you're like leaving no benefit behind. You've got to get it concise, condensed, and organized. And we worked hard to get all of these benefits classified into what came as the 4 C's: creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. So when you make that a priority for your school, it's something you weave into professional development as well as students' experience. And we're often asked, where do you start? Right? We want to make a commitment, and where should we begin? And we recommend that the first step is to leverage teacher leaders who work together to build colleagues' creative confidence, to coach each other, and to align on this exciting new vision, right? So that your school is going to be viewing creative teaching and learning experiences as valued, to focus energy on nurturing those ideas, learning from the missteps, making it a deeper commitment, and celebrating the creative learning and the creative capacity within your school. So our work with schools across the country is been so insightful for us. We really learn from the schools that we've participated with, and we find that when a school forms a creative leadership team, they see the most impact, right? Because a creative leadership team has a school-wide lens. They are teacher leaders who serve in the role of Chief Creative Officer. You might type a bit in the text box about some of your ideas about what being a Chief Creative Officer means to you. And imagine for a moment and share in the text box if your school had a group of Chief Creative Officers that formed a creative leadership team working with the administrators, the parents, colleagues. How would this embed innovative teaching strategies throughout your school? In fact, we've got a couple questions here we would like you to answer in that chat box. How would a creative leadership team enrich your school? And what would this team of teacher leaders and administrators do? So if you could just put some thoughts there. I love this. You're talking about an arts advisory group, and I'm glad you brought that up. Sometimes we hear this called a creative leadership team or an arts leadership team. Often a school improvement team will decide that their path to achieving their improvement goals is through creativity, and they will weave creativity through their school improvement team. So, I'm loving this. So they're going to help colleagues see those connections and provide resources for those who are unsure. Absolutely. Serve as an advocate for the arts. I love this. Absolutely. Great. Wow, your ideas are coming so fast. I'm really excited about your answers. When we've asked, making the impossible possible, I love it. Collaboration, huge. Thank you. So when we have asked schools, and we've worked with schools as they form their creative leadership team or they're celebrating the success of having a team for a number of years, here are some of the consistent answers that we hear. And in fact, we've organized these thoughts in an acronym because I think it helps stick. So a creative leadership team is a group of teacher leaders who help schools excel. So this team embeds the innovative teaching strategies school-wide. It really takes this school-wide lens sharing promising practices, and helping stakeholders, all the stakeholders, understand why creative teaching and learning matters. That's your parents, the colleagues, the community. And you're going to find there are going to be some champions who want to join with this effort, sign up right away, help and serve in a leadership role. And there's some that aren't sure, is this initiative going to pass? You know, sort of show me. And you're going to want all of those voices to come together, because it does take, everyone has a slightly different pace in coming on this journey. The next thing that we find that creative leadership teams do is explain the compelling evidence. So you've got fabulous information from Yvonne today. The research really supports this. And for you to translate that to your colleagues in a way that's meaningful for your school. The C in our Excel is collaborate. So co-planning is so important that you've got to carve out the time for it. It's got to be very intentional collaboration time. It's not enough to just catch each other for a moment in the parking lot or running down the hall being late to something else. Schools that plan collaboration time, where a member of the creative leadership team can sit down and co-plan a lesson with a colleague, and if that colleague wants some additional support, getting that time to go in and co-teach, and then the most important time, reflect together, that is essential. And really coaching, helping by listening to the other person and helping them think through what they want to do. Enrich the school culture. So we know that building creative capacity cultivates the kind of school culture that you're looking for, right? It's about celebrating creative collaboration and cultivating a growth mindset, right? Growth mindset means you're willing to take risks, you're willing to learn from some mishaps, but try new things. That growth mindset, right? That constant continuous improvement learning curve. And the L in Excel is lead. Lead by example, lead professional learning sessions. So think of the many ways that you might translate what you've heard from this webinar today, either in a team meeting, a PLC meeting, a staff meeting, a parent meeting, teacher leaders who share insights with others and lead professional learning sessions. And what I love about this model is that arts integration really does lean into and leverage the expertise that each cross-curricular team member brings to the party. So the art educator is the expert on art standards and make sure that the art integration projects meet the art standards, right? Just like the science teacher is going to be making sure and helping everyone understand next-gen science standards. And together, the language art and the art teacher are going to help their colleagues see the parallels between visual literacy and written literacy. And the math expert and the art teacher will talk about how their symbol systems and their vocabulary and their processes directly parallel. So no standards will be left behind. It really is leveraging the expertise of every team member. And it's really exciting to see that work happen. So we urge you to ask yourself and some like-minded colleagues how to get started and what if. What if we could help teachers implement innovative teaching strategies? Not only the champions, but those who need a little bit more coaching and coaxing, right? Because we want to engage and empower our learners as decision makers and to leverage teacher leaders as the catalyst to transform the school. Because this is the path. This is how we embark on a journey of change together. One of the examples that I love to share is from our dear friends at Prince George's County in Maryland. Their teacher leaders have been catalysts to embed and sustain the arts integration change for a number of years here, and they are deepening this commitment. So not sure if we've got a lot of Maryland people signed on, or for some of you who are out of the state might know, Prince George's County has made a commitment to arts integration. And they have 65 arts integration schools. And what I love is that they have come up with a continuum that shows how growth and embedment occurs, right? Because it is a journey, and every school is going to be following this continuum, deepening this commitment, and doing it at their own pace. Crayola is honored to provide professional development in Prince George County and to work with these teacher leaders and coaches and district leaders on creative leadership content, multiliteracies, and coaching strategies to give these teachers the tools, the resources to help embed this and share with their colleagues. This is a collaborative approach to professional learning, and it really does transform the entire ecostructure, that whole learning environment, because the teacher leaders gain coaching strategies. So what we find so important is to start with essential questions. If we ask really robust questions, often those answers lie within you, and it is the discussion at your tables with your teams that helps define what you really need and how this content pertains to your learning environment. We also make sure that this is highly interactive with art inspiration and hands-on art experiences. There's a phrase that we use at Crayola. It's make your thinking visible. Often by doing a quick sketch or a visual representation of what you're thinking, it can spark a conversation that might not have otherwise occurred. And that's what's really important, is having those dialogues around what you're thinking and feeling and a new way to look at a subject. We always make sure that there's time for reflection. Again, it's our job to give good reflexive prompts and to help people plan next steps. So you can see here from the photos with our friends at Prince George's County that this is highly engaging, and this is what it takes to embed art integration, right? The teacher leaders bring that energy and bring those ideas back to their learning community. One of the other things that we think is really important is every idea, every big idea that we work on with teachers, it cascades directly to the teachers' work with students. So every exercise, every topic translates to classroom projects, art-integrated project-based learning. So for example here, we talk a lot about leadership. In our professional development, we talk about having a school vision, having stakeholders contribute to a school vision, and this fits directly into a lesson in which students look at vision. And here you can see they're looking at leaders' vision and the impact on self and others. We've often had students come away from this exercise writing a class vision, a personal vision, and parents tell us that they go home and have conversations about a family vision, what they're aspiring to do, and how they're each going to contribute to that vision. It's very exciting. Another lens on creative leadership. Here this project is students look at the historical perspective of a vision and how it impacts the outcome. So they look at visionaries as change agents and what influences visions, right? And they compare and contrast different leaders and possible outcomes depending on the vision. So a lot of exploration where students, you can see from the artwork here, students have done a lot of original research. This is evidence-based. They're making their thinking visible, and they have driven this learning where it's a combination of the standards following their interests. I'd like to share another image because this shows so clearly what we think is so important in the classroom application, built on the pillars that we had talked about, right? Cross-curricular projects, students have agency and voice, they are problem finders as well as solution designers. There's a lot of conversation in education now about the skill of finding a problem. It's equally as important as designing solutions. And so that's really happening in these classrooms. And my last example, I just want to show this because it radiates the joy that we're looking for, right? This is one of our professional development experiences in which we explore student-led game making, right? And chose it because it brings together so many of the things that we have talked about, right? There's definitely creativity going on here. There's critical thinking. There's communication. You can see that students are deeply involved in the content. They have to do a lot of research to create the game. They're doing strategic thinking, with strategic planning to plan how a game will work and how their classmates will move through it. They're visualizing an entire system And yet during this entire experience, they radiate joy. You feel it the minute you walk into the schools and see these hands-on experiences happening. And I just wanted to close with that example of that joyous learning that happens through arts integration. And Dominique, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about some of the next steps.
Thank you, Sherry. So before I jump in, I just want to acknowledge some of the questions that we've had throughout the conversation with Yvonne around the research and Sherry around some of the live examples of professional development we've had. So Yvonne, can you please share with the group when your book will be available?
Sure. It'll be out this fall. The publisher is Palgrave Macmillan. They expect it to be in the fall cycle for textbooks and so forth, so probably around September or October. So
okay.
That's when it'll be available. So I hope people enjoy it.
Perfect. Okay. And Sherry, we received numerous requests around hearing that this is very appropriate for elementary schools, but wondering if there are examples or if this is relevant for middle and high, because it would be so great within the context of secondary school. Can you just speak a little bit about the relevancy for K-12?
Yes, so glad you asked that, because really, while we talk about 21st century learning, these are career and college and life readiness skills. And we just recently returned from the National Principal Conference, where we had the pleasure of interacting with elementary and high school principals who were talking about how students need these creative experiences and the art integration. So what's interesting is that Crayola is always historically with elementary, and we are constantly being asked now by high schools to share this professional development and to share our insights, because these are the skill sets kids need. So the content, the process really works seamlessly for all age groups. Our pillars of giving students agency, respecting students doing their own discovery, leaning into what they're curious about, doing evidence-based work. These are ageless approaches. I think that the challenge that happens in any of this arts integration is the collaboration. And with schedules and high schools, it is, you just need to work out the schedule, right? I have seen some very innovative approaches where the language arts, the art, and the history teacher have gotten together and done a block unit of time so that students can have these deeper immersions. So it is possible, but it is that time piece and that collaboration piece, so that it is truly cross-curricular, that it's important in every age level, but in elementary we have a little bit more flexibility when a teacher is with a student for the majority of the day and the bell doesn't ring every 50 minutes. But definitely worth overcoming.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry, for addressing that. So what you guys have spent the last 44 minutes or so hearing about is the research on the impact and practical strategies to really engage and empower teacher leaders and help them really kind of access additional tools around creative teaching and learning, and some project-based learning idea starters that really can help apply these new strategies immediately into the classroom to create curriculum connections and art-rich experiences for students. And so I wanted to take maybe the last 10 minutes or so to remind and hopefully enlighten some of you around what Crayola's commitment around this work looks like, what our legacy has been, and what we're able to provide in terms of support around creative teaching and learning. I think most of you are aware that we are completely rooted in education, over 100 years of being focused on supporting educators, families, and children around creatively alive kids. And we've always, worked on partnerships around inspiring creativity. As Sherry just mentioned, we have a really deep partnership with the National Association of Elementary School Principals, the Partnership for 21st Century Learning, and of course, Turnaround Arts. And this is all to share thought leadership, advocacy, impact, and strategy around how do you leverage art to reach kids and to engage kids. And in addition, we've constantly looked for various opportunities to provide professional support for educators. So if you visit our website, which a lot of you were asking questions in the group chat around where can you find these lesson plans and where can you find these project-based learning ideas, at our website, Crayola.com/educators, you will see arts integrated lesson plans. You will see archived webinars from the past 3 years that address topics such as math as a visible language, using art to promote literacy and writing, using art to create, connectedness, using art to draw families into schools. You'll see a great archive of resources and live webinars to view. And you'll also see information regarding Create Ed, which is Crayola's newest professional learning initiative that really is designed to increase creative capacity within schools by facilitating collaboration between classroom educators, art educators, curriculum leaders, school leaders, and district leaders so that there is intentional time for collaboration. And I'm seeing that people are still wanting to know what is the name of the website. So the website is Crayola.com/educators. And from there, you will be in the midst of lots of information around increasing creative capacity. And as I mentioned, Create Ed is Crayola's newest initiative around creative capacity building. It includes in-depth and in-person training to build educators' creative capacity. It's supported through an online community where resources are available to download and re-deliver to your staff because this is about capacity building. There are project-based learning exercises for grades K-8 that touch upon science, math, language arts, and are also aligned to visual arts, next-gen science standards, the NCTM standards, and the NCTE and literacy standards. And then in addition, we've got great resources to help build capacity, to help empower teacher leaders through our teacher journal. So some of the excerpts that you heard Sherry talk about in terms of project-based learning and reflective prompts and the parallel between visual arts and language arts can be found in our teacher journal for creative leadership or our teacher journal for a multilingual approach to literacy. And those resources are available when you participate in Create Ed's professional development program. I am going to quickly just remind you of the results that really matter, which is around student engagement, student-centered learning, making sure that you're a part of a joyful, creative, collaborative school culture, and really making sure that there are engaging, involved teacher leaders who are constantly thinking of creative ways to help reach learners. And so I believe we're going to turn it over for a little Q&A, and there were lots of great questions that we heard. Sherry, Yvonne, we have about 12 minutes or so before the end of this webinar. So I'm actually, Sherry, if you want to maybe answer one or two of the questions that stood out to you.
Sure. I also thought, Dominic, there's a couple of questions right there in the chat box you might want to address about certificates, participants in Create Ed get certificates, and that in fact
absolutely.
we have had high schools we have had high schools join us at Create Ed, and they say that it's some of the most refreshing, inspirational PD that they've had because it's this is so different for them.
Yes, that's absolutely right. So within the districts that we've been working with so far, at the end of the first year, there are completion certificates that can be aligned to various continuing education credits, and then we move on to plan the second year. And there's actually a 3-year trajectory of our program where we really start by emphasizing and embracing creativity and innovation, and then we move into deep embedment of classroom application, and then we really look at sustainability, continuing the momentum, really assessing the mindset of your staff to make sure that embedment and transformation is going well and healthy so that regardless of turnover, regardless of it, you are, onto a new initiative, there's still that deep-rooted kind of creative spirit and creative teaching and learning happening within your school community. So I would definitely encourage you to look more into the program and talk with our teaching and learning managers. That's something we didn't mention, but Crayola has innovative teaching and learning managers that are in different parts of the country. that work directly with school districts and schools to train their staff on building creative capacity. And that is how we deliver our in-person training. Yvonne, I saw a question that I think you can answer. There was a question around comparison between boys and girls in the data that you provided around the impact of art. Did you notice in any of your findings a difference between boys versus girls? Hello?
Yvonne?
Okay. Well, maybe we lost Yvonne, so
yeah.
Maybe so. Maybe
I'll take a different question, and hopefully she locks back in.
Okay. Sherry, I have a question for you. There was a question around the creative strategies that reach students with special needs or students with special services. How would you respond to this type of approach being applicable to students with special needs?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that, because what's so foundational about this approach is that we respect each individual's unique thoughts and contributions, and that we all have different learning styles. And so for young people who come into our schools that are differently abled, we are able to lean into their strengths. There are often students who are very hesitant with written language, or have difficulty expressing themselves in written language, and yet the art pulls so much of their thinking and makes it visible for us. And so whether it's special needs, or, a lot of our schools are telling us that this is incredibly powerful for them, for the new families. A lot of our schools have refugees families, and they have, 20, 30 languages being spoken in one elementary school building. And that when these students come in, they often have never attended a day of school in their life, right? Depending on where they came from and the refugee situation, these young children can come without any formal schooling. And they're totally intimidated, they're wide-eyed, they come in without speaking the language, and yet art is the universal language that opens up opportunities for these kids, and within months they are comfortable, they are sharing with their colleagues, and we as educators can see what children are thinking. So this is a great approach for individuals who have different needs, a whole set of diverse learning needs.
Hi, this is Yvonne. I'm back again. Sorry about that. I lost the connection.
Hi, Yvonne.
We had a big clap of thunder.
Did you hear that?
Hi there. I'm fine.
Okay.
So to address the question about the differences between impacts on boys and girls, what we found actually was that there is a difference in how we align the type of art form we present for boys and girls. So let's say, for example, you have a classroom of 4th grade boys. They are going to be active. They're going to want to move around and, not necessarily take a static approach to learning. So it may be more beneficial to involve them in some sort of rhythmic motion when it comes to pattern formation in math or the weather cycle or sorts of things, as opposed to having them take a stance where they take a pose and show what history looks like through a theatrical performance. So there are certain art forms that certain genders have more affinity for at certain points in their development. So it's really important for us to take a look at those sorts of things when it comes to gender and the arts. There are some people that had some questions. I invite you to send me an email at Yvonne, IVONNE, at Muse Research Group, MUSE, researchgroup.org, and I'm happy to answer those questions.
Perfect. And Sherry, there's
the email. If you missed it, there's the email.
Yeah. Thank you.
And Sherry Starman, there's one more question that I wanted to just throw to you, because it was asked a few times in the Q&A, and we have these conversations quite a bit, and that is, where does technology fit into a more creative school environment or a more creative classroom?
So glad you brought that up. Because we want to make sure that our 21st century learners really access all of the tools that are available to them, the tools that lie within them, their voice, as well as the technology tools that are available now. And it's important to be thinking of technology as a tool, right? It gets you there. It's not the ultimate destination. It is a way to get where you want. So it's important for your teams, your teacher leaders, to be thinking about what is it we aspire for our children, what is our vision and our desired state, and what are the paths that are going to get us there, what tools and resources we need. And so technology can be part of that resource list, the ways that we enable children to see and think in a different way. But one of the things that we've often heard is don't treat technology like it is the goal. Realize that it is a means to an end.
Thank you. Perfect. So with about 4 minutes left, our approach at Crayola is always around taking an opportunity to reflect. And so we'd like to leave you with some of these probing questions around how you'll share the insights learned today, around the importance of creativity and why creative teaching and learning matters. We want to leave you with an understanding of what compelling evidence was most relevant to you. So I'm going to leave as a parting slide our reference slide, and you guys can also download this presentation and refer to the reference slide at the end with all of the full citations available to you. And then who might help you, your district or your school, deepen the commitment to arts integrated project-based learning? You know, there are a lot of different models out there where, you know, people are working as a collective to bring arts experiences into schools. There are state agencies, community agencies, private partners, public partners. There are local arts education groups that are all working in small pockets to support school systems and schools. And Crayola has been really happy to be a partner within most of those pockets of change. And we're looking to do more partnering with schools to help them build the collective, increase creative capacity. And lastly, we've been talking about this all within the context of professional development, right? The only way to affect change is to have experiences and have training and sharpen skills and enlighten those that may not have the information. And a lot of that comes through professional development. So if any of your schools or your teachers or your staff is interested in understanding how Crayola's professional development works and receiving a preview of this professional development for your leadership team, we are very happy to talk with you about that. Yvonne, Sherry, do either of you have any other closing words?
No, just excited by the comments that people have shared here. Thrilled that we share this passion on how we can help kids.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Just the enthusiasm was phenomenal. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys very much. I'm going to leave it on the reference slide for those of you that are interested in the citations. And we look forward to hearing from you. If we didn't address some of your questions, we will be happy to review those offline and follow up with you thereafter. Thank you.